My friends, I've got a very urgent update to bring to you. This is very urgent. Now, a lot of people think that the movement that has been created from France and has now been adopted in Canada, known as the Yellow Vest movement, they think this is a joke. The media doesn't want to listen to us. The government doesn't want to listen to us. But right now, what is happening is that the flames are being fanned, and they're being fanned viciously right now. So I have heard from many sources and from many news outlets and from the Environment Minister herself that if the long-haired macddady, son of Satan, Justin Trudeau, were to be reelected in 2019, carbon taxes would go up big time. Now, the Environment Minister never said that directly, but I have an article from the Edmonton Sun in which they have her quoted saying that in 2020, everyone has to come back and be more ambitious. Mckenna told Canadian press last week that by the end of 2020, a re-elected macddady government, that's not what she said, but that's what I'm saying, Trudeau government will introduce tougher industrial greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets than the existing one. So what that basically means is that they're going to get even more aggressive with this whole global warming business, which means that they're going to, that can only mean one thing. Prices are going to go up. Taxes are going to go up. The carbon tax is going to be even more expensive. I mean, when I suggest to people who are willing to listen that the best way to take care of the environment is to plant more trees, is to have businesses that are fossil fuel companies come here so that we can regulate them instead of driving them out of the country and having them move to China where they spew even more carbon. It's like I'm talking to a brick wall, which is like what it's like with most of these Canadian problems. I feel sometimes that I'm talking to a brick brown wall. It is just ridiculous. I mean, the woman isn't saying that she's going to raise prices, but that's how this government, which is run by the son of Satan, Justin, the long-haired macddady, pimpmeister, Justin Trudeau, that's the avenue they've taken. So what has happened in France, and it hasn't worked in France because the Yellow Vest movement is a very serious movement in France, and they are aggressive. They are vicious. Every Saturday, they're out on the street. They are taking stuff over. They take over toll roads. They occupied the city of Paris. And Emmanuel Macron bended and said, look, we're not going to raise gas prices anymore. We're raising gas prices. People in the countryside, small towns where public transit is very unreliable, they need their cars and they need reliable gas prices. We bend, we give up. It didn't work in France, so it looks like they're going to try and adopt this in Canada. Now, I have said that Canada, my friends, my brothers and my sisters, is the guinea pig to the elites, the United Nations, New World Order type people, world government type people, and people who implement these sort of measures which harm the people, harm the little guy. They use Canada as a guinea pig. Now, it didn't work in France, but that's because the French are very aggressive and they're not going to tolerate this. They know here that in Canada, the weak Canadian is not going to do anything about it. So let's have the macddady get reelected. Let's raise gas prices. Let's put 2 or 10 carbon taxes on gas prices, fuel prices, and people who live in small towns or in villages all over Canada will have to pay that. They rely on their car. Many of these people who live in small towns are already struggling because in Canada, small towns and villages equals no jobs, no investment. things are very expensive and things are far and few between. It's a very hard living. And the Mac Dad is making it worse, and it's going to be even more worse when we have to pay an extra $15, $20 on our gas when we rely on our vehicles, because public transit is very unreliable. Public transit is unreliable all over Canada. I mean, I live in the GTA, and the fact is that if they're not cutting back on the number of buses that they're using to bring people where they need to go, point A to point B, they're jacking up the price of the bus fare every day. There's no competition for these public transit companies. They're all publicly owned and they're all monopolies. The city council that doesn't give a damn about its people because they keep getting reelected by the same brain-dead Canadians. They keep getting reelected. Someone who's been there for years and years gets reelected to their council. They vote to raise the price of the bus fare. If you're in the Markham region or the York region, the bus fare is, get this, $4. $4. New York City, it's like $2 something and they complain about it. I mean, the York region, which is North Toronto, it's $4. So many people choose to have cars, and you're going to work. I mean, they have this toll road in Markham, 407, which was stupidly and foolishly privatized. So as a result, the main road, which is Markham Road, is always packed up like a parking lot so people can go to work in Toronto. So they need their cars because they're not going to pay $4 to go on some stupid bus, which barely comes. I mean, sometimes you're waiting half an hour for one bus. So they want their cars, and they don't want to pay more money to have to fill up their car when you have politicians saying, ride the bus, it's better for the environment, ride the bus, and if you don't ride the bus, we're going to jack up fuel prices, carbon taxes, all this sort of stuff, but we don't have a bus system that's reliable, and when we choose to do so, we won't consult the public, we will jack up the price to $4, and on top of that, we will have the buses coming late, they get delayed, they're not reliable, the bus driver's a dick. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I'm not saying all bus drivers, but I'm saying, that's the struggle that people go through. And people are just sick of it. And it's coming here. And you think it's a joke. And you think it's some kind of game. It's coming here. And the Environment Minister, who is one of the most trashy women ever. I mean, there are pictures of her, with no shoes on at meetings, crossing up her legs, putting her feet up on the chair. This woman is a piece of trash. She's a floozy. Catherine Mckenna is saying that she is going to ramp up this whole carbon tax thing. Well, let me tell you something about the carbon tax. The carbon tax and putting a price on carbon is one of the best gifts that you could give to countries like China and Venezuela. And it's one of the worst things you could do for the environment. A carbon tax means you're driving businesses away because they're the ones who have to pay the carbon tax. I mean, I'm not even talking about price on fuel now. I've covered that story and it's coming. And if the Yellow Vest movement doesn't take itself seriously and ramp up and start getting a little more aggressive, it's going to come and there'll be nothing you can do about it. But the carbon tax that businesses have to pay will drive them out of Canada, just like GM and all the oil sectors in Alberta was driven out of Canada. They'll go to China, they'll go to Venezuela, they'll go to Egypt, they'll go to Mexico, they'll go wherever they can. And many of these countries have very lackadaisical environmental regulations. They do. It's a fact. Look at China. I mean, you go to China, it looks like a blanket is over the sky or something. People go to China, they live there for months on end. They come back, they have to take up smoking because it's so bad. The air is so bad in China. So they go there, and there's no environmental regulations. They've been driven out of Canada because of the carbon tax. No environmental regulations means they get to spew even more carbon into the atmosphere. So, ironically, the same tool they're using to cut climate change or global warming is actually going to make the environment even more polluted. And I think they know that. I think they know that. They know that, but this is a cabal. This is a cartel of greedy people who are cashing in. They're screwing the people. They're shafting the people, and they're cashing in on top of it. Many of these organizations, green organizations, these liars, these pimps, these macddaddies, all of them, Al Gore, George Soros, Rothschild, Justin the long-haired macddaddy Trudeau, all of them are just a bunch of pimps who are cashing in on the little guy, and we should not take it anymore. They know that a carbon tax is the stupidest, dumbest thing that mankind ever brought up or ever thought up. They know that if you put a carbon tax on a country which is known for not spewing as much carbon as many other countries, America included, that it will just drive businesses to other nations which have less environmental regulations, and they'll spew more carbon into the atmosphere. They know that. It's part of the plan to screw the people. So are we going to take it and we're just going to, waste our time talking about frivolous issues, or are we going to stand up and say, hell no? We need to do something, even if it means occupying Parliament Hill in the city of Ottawa, even if it means doing that. But something has to be done. And you can say I'm encouraging violence all you want. I'm not necessarily encouraging any violence. I'm encouraging revolution here. We need to let the government of this country listen to us, because they never listen to us. And we're going to make sure they listen to us. And the media is going to pay attention. And with that being said, my friends, I just have to say that this country is in very deep trouble, because the Mac Daddy could very well get reelected. Don't be excited over one or two polls saying the Conservatives are in the lead. You have those there and all this sort of stuff, but many Canadians are still brain dead. Now, that doesn't mean that a majority of Canadians like the Mac Daddy, because that's wrong. That's incorrect. You saw what happened in Ontario with Doug Ford, Quebec, New Brunswick, soon to be Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. A majority of Canadians don't like this Mac Daddy, son of Satan, who came from the womb of a trashy Vancouver woman. They don't like that. They don't like him, and they don't like what he's doing to this nation. And it's not just a difference of opinion. It's the fact that he is destroying this nation and selling out to globalists and to the United Nations and all sorts of crazy things. But if we don't remain united, he's going to win. He's going to win. And if he wins, it's a good chance that we will lose for sure. But I've said that he might very well win. So we need to be united. This whole PPC, conservative, foolish. I've already said that Andrew Scheer needs to resign. But that doesn't mean I'm going to vote PPC, because I'm not going to encourage party splitting here. I'm not going to. That's the reason why conservatives never do well in Canada. I say that Andrew Scheer needs to resign for failing to keep the right united. Conservatives are the main right-wing party in Canada, and we have a first-past-the-post system. That's what we have to live with. Get rid of Scheer. Encourage Maxime to run in another conservative leadership. Get rid of this PPC or DUDUC or whatever it's called, and bring them all in together and unite again to defeat the son of Satan. We have to do this. We have to encourage Maxime to do this. And we have to encourage Andrew Scheer to resign, because he's failed. He's failed. Let him be Speaker of the House again. That's what he's good at. But with that being said, I'm Michael Arana, and this is the Arana Nation.